All right, everybody, welcome back. First off, Happy New Year. Um, that's pretty much all I have to say. The series that we're covering for the next few videos is going to be Forges of Mars. Um, and yeah, it's just going to be your standard video. It's not an anthology this time. It's a single book, so it's just going to be summary, characters, who's it for, review, etc. But yeah, let's jump right into it. So, bookkeeping author is Graham McNeil. Narrator is Joe Jameson. Published date is July 31st, 2012. So, unlike Storm of Iron, we're not in 2002 anymore. We're jumping forward a decade. And then the series is Forges of Mars, but the book is Priests of Mars, the first of the three. Okay, so the summary. In the far future of the 40th millennium, humanity has fallen far from its technological peak. The galaxy is now a dark and dangerous thing full of mystery. The Adeptus Mechanicus, as stewards of knowledge, have become ever more dogmatic in tracking down the fragments of humanity past technology to study it. Archmagos Lexell Kotov is politically damned, and the expedition that he has formed is the last chance he has to redeem himself in the face of all his failures. However, it is Roboute Sircof that brings the last piece of the puzzle, which allow the expedition to leave from Jaura and track a lost Mechanicus expedition, as well as make it past what is called the Halo Scar. Within the Halo Scar lies a secret to possibly time itself. If whatever is causing this phenomenon that can seemingly control time itself can be brought back to Holy Mars, humanity will become an undisputed power in the galaxy. Yeah, I mean, it's a very unique setup and a very unique series. So, moving on to the characters. Lexell Kotov, I'll probably touch on him first because he just has nothing to actually say about him. Even after having read the book, his very recently, his main character trait is that he's an Archmagos and he just does Archmagos things for Archmagos reasons. I don't know if that was intentional. He's ambitious, he's political, he's an Archmagos. There's not much to say about him. He has no actual real personality. He just is who he is, and that's just the way it is. Vitaly Tychon, he's a stellar cartographer and a senior tech priest who created his daughter Linnea by cloning himself to be his successor. Very Mechanicus. Who wants to have sex when you could just clone yourself and then make them a girl because you want a daughter or something? He's a bit of an outlier when it comes to tech priests. He still possesses, and more importantly, cares about the emotional component of being human. This puts him exactly opposite of most in the Mechanicus, who are constantly at war with their humanity to achieve the cold calculus of machines in order to better achieve their goals, or just to complete their work more efficiently. After all, flesh is weak. Vitaly loves his daughter greatly, while she, in her own words, loves him for what he represents, but not out of an irrational emotional response to something so mundane as him being her father. His role in the book is relatively minor, so it's a credit to the author that he is still memorable among a big cast with a lot of names and competing personalities. As far as the book is concerned, he's the most studied on the Halo Scar. He runs, or I guess he runs. I want to say he runs an observatory on Quatria and the Halo Scar, and this area of space inside of the Segmentum Tempestus is pretty much his specialty. That's where he does most of his studies. So the area of space that the exposition is going is called the Halo Scar, and just that's part of the reason why he was invited to join the expedition is because of this. And he actually notably wasn't invited to actually join the expedition. Kotov was just hey, give me your data. You don't actually have to come along with us. We'll still give you credit. And then Vitaly was no, I want to come with because I don't get off Quatria enough, and also this sounds like a cool adventure. And then his daughter is also we didn't have to actually be here. And then Vitaly was but it's cool though. Okay, Linnea, an opposite sex clone who differs from Vitaly not only biologically but emotionally. She is a much more tech priest esque character than her father. The fact that they are family though allows McNeil to explore what Mechanicus family means when born of gene engineering rather than love or chance or just family in general. We don't really see Mechanicus relations very often, at all. Usually all the tech priests that you see are just unrelated to each other, and by usually I mean 99.999% of the time they just don't know each other. They just work together. So it's super rare that we see like, father daughter, let alone, just relation in general occur within a story. So even though she is much like her fellow peers in the cult Mechanicus, behaviorally the same cannot be said about her approach in learning. Linnea is younger and has a less ossified mindset, which allows her to be more questioning in the face of a usually more heavily entrenched and dogmatic view on the galaxy. She's more often than not comes off as like the idealized version of what tech priests are supposed to be. And for all the challenges and indictments the Mechanicus receives throughout this kind of narrative from the author, Linnea seems to be kind of like the counter argument to like all of the, Mechanicus slander that occurs in this book. Hiramau Dawn, he's the Secutor. He's an Adeptus Mechanicus Secutor, which is a rank that places him at the top of the military component of the expedition, and he answers basically only to the Archmagos. It's not that they're the same rank, it's just that he's so specialized in military that the Archmagos basically, like, can't really advise him on doing anything, because the Archmagos is like, I don't know how to... I know how to fight, in as much as you can know how to fight without making it, like, your whole personality. And then the Secutor was like, I made it my whole personality, so you should probably listen to me when I tell you that, like, this is how we should do it when it comes to military. So, like, yeah, the Archmagos is kind of like final word and stuff. I don't want people getting confused on like, oh, well, that means Secutors are like equal to Archmagos. It's like, no. If it's a smart Archmagos, they'll be like, well, you know more about military stuff than I do. So if you say something that's like specific to something I don't know anything about, then I'll just kind of like let you take the lead on this. So yeah, while the Archmagos is higher in rank, they kind of work together, and like all that jazz. So long since having foregone the notion that gut instinct or intuition can do anything but get in the way, Dawn instead relies on complex analysis or of any opponent or battlefield to make all decisions. He is the exemplar of Adeptus Mechanicus military doctrine. His predisposition towards data-backed decisions are routinely put to the test when he has to work alongside the Cadians and Black Templars, who are all too human. The arc that he goes through is interesting. While he never states that he's wrong in his approach outright, he does end up training with the Black Templars when they demonstrate that a fight isn't something that you can predict. So, yeah, one of the highlights of the book is a sparring session between the Black Templars and this Secutor, which is neat to see. Oddly enough, I am going to talk about the ship itself as if it's a character. So the ship that, like, this whole kind of fleet surrounds itself and, like, kind of is comprised by is the Speranza. The Speranza is what's known as an Archmechanicus, notably the real thing, like an actual Archmechanicus, and not just a title. It's important to know that like these ships are supremely rare and have never been able to be created by the Mechanicus. Instead, they can only be found. So before I talk about the Speranza specifically, basically what that means is like an Archmechanicus is now kind of both a title that is given to a ship to kind of reflect a tech priest's status and to indicate like, oh, well, that's your, like, just a status thing, essentially. I don't want to get like too deep in the weeds, but just think of if it's not an Archmechanicus in its creation or like, in its technological foundation, then it's actually just a ship that isn't an Archmechanicus, but it's just the title that is given because a real Archmechanicus is just such a holy object that now it's more of like a status symbol than anything else. And then a real Archmechanicus is like this massively overpowered, like technological zenith ship that you don't really see in the setting very often. So in the Speranza's case, it was found on one of Archmagos Kotov's Forge Worlds. Don't remember which one. I definitely have it written in the notes, but I don't want to read it. So it was found on, like, in the crust of the planet in one of the Forge Worlds, and it was only partially constructed. Originally, when they first like took a look at it, they were like awestruck because it's Mechanicus, And because this is like genuinely in Archmagos, so they were just like, oh my god, this is amazing. It's already created, but it's not. It was just partially constructed. So they spent like hundreds of years putting it together, and then they took another couple hundred years to get it into space, and then they took like a little bit longer to actually wake up the machine spirit. So the waking of its machine spirit actually made every reactor on like the forge world below just like melt down, because like for some reason like the code blurt that happened from like the machine spirit like waking up made all the other machine spirits on the planet below just like have a conniption, and then just kind of like everything exploded. So it led to the death of everyone on the planet and the loss of a forge world, because it just became like this massively irradiated wasteland. Oddly enough, this wasn't the reason for Kotov like losing his status, because in the book he's actually like doesn't he's on the outs with the cult Mechanicus. His status within is just trash, but it implies that he actually has lost like multiple forge worlds. So I don't know like who you have to be in the Mechanicus to like lose one and then just get like a slap on the wrist and then lose like multiple others and then finally have the Mechanicus be like, all right, well, we're gonna have to start looking at demoting you. Like, we're not gonna kill you, but it's like, what did you do? Anyways, moving on. So he's lost his status within the cult. In the contemporary Imperium, one of the only like Arch Mechanicus that exist is owned by Belisarius Cawl, and the reason they are so sought after is because of their sheer level of technology that makes them a mobile forge world. For example, here's an excerpt from the book. So Roboute had heard of the vessels known as Arch Mechanicus, but had dismissed the tales of their continent-sized cityscapes and planetoid bulk as exaggerations, embellished legends, or outright lies. Now he knew better. A passing battleship that he recognized as a Dominator-class vessel sailed below the Speranza, and its length was more than eclipsed by the beam of the Arch Mechanicus. The Speranza was all infrastructure and industry, a hive's worth of manufactories, refineries, crackling power plants, and kilometer upon kilometer of laboratories, testing ranges, chemical vats, and gene bays arranged in as efficient a way as the ancient plans for its construction had allowed. Its engines were larger than most starships. Full mass, its individual void generators and Geller arrays large enough to shroud a frigate by themselves. For the Mechanicus, these ships are no less than holy, since they are thought to be as old or older than the Dark Age of technology. Here is another excerpt from the book from a high-ranking tech priest on board. He says, this entire vessel is a palace, a temple to the god of all machines. Its operation is an act of devotion, its existence a display of faith and belief. To serve aboard such a holy link to the past is to commune with the Omnissiah itself. And that was from Tarkus Blaylock, another tech priest. I actually won't talk about him other than to kind of mention his name as he exists, because this is a huge cast, and if I talked about every single one, we would be here for a while. So it should also be made clear that the Mechanicus, even with its exposure to these relics, still hasn't come to a full understanding of its technology, with many systems not fully understood or not even knowing they are there. In fact, there are whole sections of the ship that just aren't known about to the occupants of these great ships. And the Speranza will come up again because in the lore segment, I am going to talk about Arch Mechanicus and just machine spirits in general. So, moving on to Abraham Locke in the meantime. So he begins as a space dock worker on the planet of Jaura, but is captured by a bonding team and reclassified as a bondsman. I should say not a bonding team, a collar team, like COLLAR. So yeah, because there's Navy vessels will show up to a system and be like, we need lower deck men, and then they'll send these collar teams down to the planet below and then just conscript people, and they will not ask you politely. They will just kidnap you, and then you are owned by the ship until you die, or they release you. But most likely you'll die. So, and by most likely, I mean like every single time. I don't think I've ever read a book where they actually did release, but I'm sure it's happened. So I won't say every single time. It's just most of the time. But yeah, he becomes a bondsman of the lower decks within the Speranza. He provides a rare look at life of those under the Mechanicus control, but also just life of a civilian in general, which is like really rare. This is a POV that basically never gets shown, let alone like gets given a fully fleshed out character. I don't know why. I guess civilians are just not that interesting, or they're like too complex to kind of like lay out. Because if you have to describe how a civilian lives, then there's like a ton of world building that goes into that, and the payoff might not actually be that high. It's a lot easier to just be like, all the factoral workers died, instead of actually telling you how they worked or like what their workstation looked like or anything like that. You could just be like, it's just a pile of rust. I don't know what this could have done. I'm the author. What do you mean they worked here? There's just a pile of dust now. But anyway, there's not a whole lot to say about him, like specifically, at least not yet. But he does do like a lot of heavy lifting within the narrative. I would go so far as to say that he carries a good portion of the book. And if you like put his sections up against the Cadian like training drills, like the Black Templars Templum parts, or the bickering of like the Titans Princeps, like Abrahim's are by far and above like way more interesting. For as much as Roboute, like the rogue trader, is supposed to bring like a human element to the book, I do think that his character like does a decent job of it. And the fact that he is like of a different class within the Imperium means that his angle is like much more of like high society than bottom of the barrel grind that sees those unappreciated souls toil their humanity away. So like you do get like two pretty human perspectives that aren't basically Militarum, because like the Cadian, yes, I know, but like their soldiery, and we see, you know, their soldier number like 5,000,005 that we've seen like in any book imaginable. So when you see like a rogue trader, or like someone in Abraham's case who's like a bondsman, they actually represent kind of like an interesting like new angle versus like, ah yes, I have seen you before, but under a different name and in a different book. But yeah, so I just think that Abraham is just a bit more interesting rather than Roboute, but they both provide a real like a human perspective. And speaking of Roboute, he is a captain of the rogue trader vessel named Renard, which nobody will care about this next part, but I caught this detail in the beginning, so you're going to know about it too. The Renard is a classic triplex file 99 Intrepid class with Konar sanctioned upgrades to her shield arrays, which, you know, we can add that to the innumerable and equally useless to know like ship classifications, like the setting offers. Outside of a very select few, I rarely ever see a classification used twice. Like in the before like excerpt, it said like a dominator class, and I'm just like, listen, Linda, just call it a ship or a frigate or something. Do not name it a specialized class, because I swear to God, I don't actually see new, like, or not new. I see nothing but new. I don't see old classifications reused. It's always just a new one. And I'm like, I know that the galaxy is large, right? But in theory, the Imperium uses like nothing but standard template constructs and like variations of to like make all these ships. And these ships are in like service for thousands of years. Like a new ship is like 4,000 years old. So you're telling me that we don't re-see classifications? It's always just a new one. Like it's to the point where I would put real money on the authors just like coming up with a new classification for every novel they write whenever a void ship comes up, uh, just cuz. So that's like his ship out of the way. Like that's the Renard. Roboute is, yes, named after the Primarch of the Ultramarines. He is the survivor of a void battle, rescued by the Eldar and possessing an artifact from the lost expedition of Magos Telok, which disappeared past the Halo Scar and serves as the singular item the Mechanicus needs to begin the expedition to the section of space called the Halo Scar. They need to get in order to get to the bottom of why Magos Telok never came back and why some stars in the area are aging faster than is natural. So that's like the original reason why this expedition is kind of like launched. Is like, first off, they get a message back being from Magos Telok, and then mentioning something called the Breath of Creation, and then the Vitali, or the Tychons, they like witness. So it's like a bunch of different data sets kind of like come together, and all paint a picture of like, oh, we need to go out there. But the Tychons see that like stars themselves are just aging hundreds of thousands of years faster than they should, just out of nowhere. And then they tell Mars, and then this eventually makes it to Kotov, and then Kotov is like, we should make an expedition out there. And then the Mechanicus is like, hold your horses, buckaroo. We don't actually know how to get over there. And so the whole expedition goes like on a halt for like decades. And then Roboute is like, comes along and basically puts the word out like, hey, I have an escape pods from the Tamioka, which is the flagship of Magos Telok. He has like an escape pods identifier beacon, and he's like, I got you. Like, I could give you the data if you let me go on your expedition and like see what's on the Halo Scar, because I'm an adventurous human being and that's what I want for payment. And then so that's how pretty much this whole expedition kind of comes together, and it occurs over decades. And then the expedition itself does not occur over decades. So he is a like a rogue trader, but he's also kind of a wild card within the expedition, and he doesn't really have a place in it. Like, he brings the tech, and then everyone fully expects him to just kind of request payment and then leave, because they're just kind of like, well, the Cadians are our military, Skitarii are our military, the Titans have a, like, they're Mechanicus, they're here for a reason. Everybody kind of has a reason to be here, and then Roboute is just kind of like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do, but like, I'm here and I want to be, but like, I got nothing. But what he ends up being is kind of the foil to Archmagos Kotov. Since he doesn't exist within the hierarchy, and he's not inside of any other kind of like branch of the Imperium, because rogue traders aren't really a thing, but they are. Like, it's their writ that kind of make them important, but everything else about them is just kind of like, I just do my thing, bro. He's able to kind of challenge Kotov when he makes calls that that Roboute either just doesn't agree with, or that everyone else is like, man, this is going to be a really bad call. Like, Roboute is able to step in and do the thing. So I guess you get like, he's more of like a tool kind of to interact with Kotov in a meaningful way, rather than a character sometimes. But it is what it is. The Cadians, the Black Templars, and the Titan Legio. The Legio is Sirius, by the way. I don't know if that matters to anybody else, but that is the Legio that they represent. While all three of these factions kind of represent a significant portion of the expedition, both politically and in manpower, they do not have the presence that you would expect in the novel. They serve mainly to contrast or highlight elements of the Mechanicus. For example, the Black Templars are zealots of the Imperial cult, on top of being Astartes, which possess a great amount of martial prowess through study and training. They also heavily rely on visions and intuition in fights. This puts them at odds with the Secutor, and even ends with them sparring, as I said earlier, to see whose doctrine is best. The Titans are an out-of-place variable, and that's pretty much all I'm going to say about them until the review. They are a great exhibition of what happens when the human element is so intrinsically mixed with the immense power of the machines of old, and in my opinion, the least interesting part of the book. Again, I'm going to save it to the review, but yeah. Augmenting the Mechanicus military elements are the Cadians of the 71st Hellhounds. With nothing else to do on ship, they perform combat drills within specifically outfitted arenas designed by the Secutor himself. Cool, like, it's a neat little thing that I'll mention, but these combat arenas run basically the entire like span of the ship, and the Secutor has been given like a huge amount of the ship to kind of just do, like, to outfit and curate and make like his own specialist arenas. And some of these arenas aren't just like, a circle like with a thing, or just like, imagine like straight up cities and towns being made in these areas, and that kind of gives you a small little idea of these, like, of where these drills and how these drills are conducted. Like, this ship is massive, it's continent size, so it allows for like Titans can like do their own drills alongside everybody else doing their drills. So if that gives you just kind of like an idea of how big this space is, like, there's Lehman Russes doing their own like tank drills, and then there's Mechanicus vehicles. I'm not going to pretend like I know all of their different vehicles, even though I should. Like dune crawlers probably are the only thing that I can that I could talk about because they're iconic. But yeah, so it's just a cool little addition that this book made. That this like arena is just so big, just the scale is awesome. Anyways, so these drills are either like Cadians practicing with Cadians, or they're Cadians like fighting against Scutari, or they're fighting against basically like just servitor drones that like have been specially augmented to put up a fight and stuff like that. So the benefit to this is yet another contrast between like human ingenuity pitted against the ever pragmatic Mechanicus. So we don't really see any like Scutari and Cadian. The only real like the kind of friction, I guess, rubber meeting the road is with the Secutor talking to all these different or interacting with these different military institutions. I will say the Secutor never actually talks to the Titans. The Titans really only talk to each other, which, like, okay. Anyway, moving on. Some other names, I'm just going to mention them just so you get an idea of like how big this cast actually is, but also because like if you ever want to read this in the future, you kind of have an idea of who to like look out for. So Iana Pavelka is the tech priest on board the Reynard. Emil Nader is the first officer and gifted pilot. He's originally from Espandor. Gideon Tyval. We never see Gideon ever, but Gideon is the astropath on board the Reynard. Literally is mentioned once. Pretty sure the author forgot this guy existed. And yeah, Adara Sayavash, he is the muscle, I guess. Even Roboute actually has no idea why Adara is like on the ship. He's a gifted fighter, really good with a sword, or not a sword, a blade. It's specifically like a knife and a rifle, like enough that Roboute, he's from Ajax, and Roboute is like, man, if he actually like tried, he could probably get a like marksman badge from the Ajax Defense Auxilia. So yeah, apparently he's good with the rifle, he's good with a knife, etc., etc. He is like a decent character. All of the characters I'm mentioning are actually pretty good. But yeah, Karen Silkwood, it's a she, and she is an engine seer on the Reynard. So the Reynard has a tech priest and an engine seer. Not often you see that. It's not often that you actually see an engine seer and a tech priest actually engage with each other. Then we have on the Mechanicus side, Magos Blaylock, Tarkus Blaylock. He's a Fabricatus Locum. We have Magos Sizek, a master of engines. Magos Ezira Magali of Astrogation, and then Magos Cryptostrex of Logisticaris. Thank God I got through all those names. High Gothic, man. They really need to chill. On the bondsman side, so we have Abraham, we have Cohen, we have Crusher, and we have Hawk. My boy. So we already talked about Abraham, and I'm not going to talk about Cohen or Ishmael. I will talk about Ishmael next book. He's incredibly important next book. The only thing I'll say about Ishmael now is that he was a supervisor for Cohen and Abraham back on Jaura, and that's it. He gets made into a servitor because he makes a fuss. He's all like, I'm a supervisor. I shouldn't be working with all these bondsmen. What are you doing? At least make me a junior tech priest or something. And then he just gets like taken away and made into a servitor because the Mechanicus ain't dealing with that. But yeah, so I will talk about Hawk though. So speaking of Hawk, just like in Storm of Iron, he isn't a main character, and instead, just like a far too interesting side character. He gets captured alongside Abraham and Co. and becomes an indentured bondsman. Abraham's impression of Hawk is that he is a born survivor and that he is full of low cunning and guile that has been built up over the years of his hard life. The first thing that Hawk does once he has the chance to is befriend the Ogren. Yes, Crusher. Crusher's great. Everyone loves a good Ogren that is captured with them at the bar so as to prevent others from taking advantage of him and to have like a measure of control over his circumstance. Being a bondsman doesn't take, though. His prior experience in the militarum has taught him the best ways of making even the most mundane task take much longer than it should. It leaves him with energy and spirit at the end of shifts for him to become a proprietor of people's needs on board the ship. He starts by building a still and making alcohol so that he has something to barter with, and goes from there. His reputation builds like high enough that he's able eventually to deal with like junior tech priests and Scutari. As an aside, I am going to start using him as like a metric of how relatable characters are. Like I'm literally just going to call it the Hawk scale, attached to like every character. It won't be in the Forges of Mars series, but like once we get through this, we're going to be using the Hawk scale, because this man is by far and above the most relatable character like in any book I've ever read in the 40K setting. Just both in like personality and just kind of like the way he comports himself, and like how his reactions to like basically anything. I'm just like, yeah, like a lot of us want to believe that we would be a different character in the setting, but I'm pretty sure all of us would just be like a variation of Hawk. So he's also, I think, growing to be like my favorite character in the setting. I don't mean this to be like a Hawk glaze fest, but you know, like every time I take a few years off from this series because I don't want to read it too often, and I come back to reading it and I'm just reminded of how cool this character is. And I would give any of most people's favorites characters in the setting, like I would easily be like, oh no, Eisenhorn, oh no, and then in the sacrifice of Eisenhorn get like a book series where Hawk is like a crime lord or something. I would love that so much. Like, oh no, Mephiston, don't go into the warp. Oh no. And then suddenly we get like a Hawk series. It would be great. I would love that so much. Anyways, so that's it for the characters. It's a lot because it's a lot. We'll kind of touch on like the number of characters in the review because, yeah, I mean, it's been 33 minutes and we're still on the character section. So, yeah. Lore and homework. So, what is a Mandeville point? It's the weakest point in any given system, like star system, between the warp and real space. Like, that is the simplest way you can possibly explain what a Mandeville point is. And the reason that's important is because it's the least dangerous like way to access the warp. Because if you do it anywhere else in the system, bad things will happen to you. Okay? You don't, because that being said, you don't have to use the Mandeville point. If you have like a strong enough astropathic choir, or like you're being protected by a strong enough like demon, or like the Emperor, then you can get away with jumping like literally wherever you want. Because, I mean, name a book like that it happens in, you can find them. So there is like plenty of like examples of people being like, well, and so I'm not saying like to anyone who's like, no, you don't have to use a Mandeville. I'm like, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying the Mandeville point is the safest place to do it, and it is the standard way that like everybody who doesn't have plot armor, or like an author who's just trying to like not write a space battle, actually use, you know. And then the next point. So, what are the implications of machine spirits? There's a part in this book, if you've listened at all to Luton, or basically anybody in the like Warhammer lore space, then you've heard of this part that I'm about to talk about. You just probably didn't know that it came from this book. So this Branza gets into some trouble when crossing the Halo Scar, and like supposedly it's continent sized. So I really don't know how this like tiny little like Eldar cutter is like doing the thing, but supposedly it's about to be destroyed by this Eldar ship. In desperation, the Archmagos fully submerges his consciousness with the Mechanicus ship and engages with the machine spirit in its like entirety. Turns out that it is but a fraction of a greater whole. The implication is that he's talking to a true artificial intelligence, or, you know, the OGs in the community call them the Man of Gold or Men of Gold. This being is able to be convinced to help the crew fend off the Eldar by giving access to a chrono weapon that shoots black holes. I mean, so I'm not actually sure what this gun did, because like the whole section is like it shoots a chrono thing that if it that the chrono thing that it shoots, if it makes contact with another thing, then or the thing it's shooting at, whatever, physics, technically everything is a thing. We're all made of atoms. So the instant it comes out, makes contact with an atom, that's a thing. So I guess it's like calibrated for the specific thing that it's shooting at and not just a thing, because everything's a thing. Even like there is no such thing as nothing. Space isn't empty. Um, when it makes contact with the thing, it like duplicates the thing in such a way where two atoms are now like existing in the same space, and then that can't happen, so it just explodes because you can't just like it duplicates it. One thing goes like 1 second into the future, one thing stays in the present, and then they are like somehow shanghaied into the present again, and then those two atoms are like in the same place occupying the same space but at two different times, and then boom, it's a big boom. But it also talks about how a black hole forms in that it shot a black hole. So I don't know if it just does two things at once. It's very vague. It all happens really fast. You can reread the section a lot and still not know what's going on. But yeah. So the point is, the Mechanicus has had this ship for like hundreds of years, and then this gun just pops out of the deck, and then they're just sitting there like, we've never seen this before. Yeah, so it kind of shows how kind of backwards the Mechanicus has become when like their own ships are kind of unknown to them. Yeah. Furthermore, that's not the interesting part. It says that this entity says, because Kotov actually converses with it. It's not a lengthy conversation, but it is like more than we usually get when stuff like this happens. If a ship dies, it won't die because it exists throughout the galaxy. And I have a pet theory that all machine spirits are just like AI elements, and the Mechanicus just don't recognize them as AI. I don't think I'm like too big brains to kind of come to that conclusion. I think that's the implication. But yeah, like that is my personal like headcanon when it comes to machine spirits. In Lazarus, I don't think it's actually called just Lazarus, but that's the partial name of the title that's coming to my brain right now. So in Lazarus, a Dark Angels book, there are like knights that pilot themselves, and in the end of a book, a tech priest directly converses with, like, he doesn't jack in, he literally talks to this. He like walks into the bridge of it, and he's just like, sup. He doesn't actually say that, but like, you know what I mean. He actually talks to it with language, and then this thing talks back with also a language. So they're like fully ambulatory things. They're not just like passive. It's not just like, oh, the rhino, it just didn't want to die. It's like, no, 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 it literally didn't want to die, and it actually started piloting itself because it's an actual thing. So keep that in mind, I guess, or pay more attention when machine spirits come up, and start kind of really, really looking at what they do, because it's interesting. There is also a Man of Iron in like the Blackstone on a Blackstone fortress. This was like way back when. I don't know if it still exists, but it's called UR025. Fun short story. It's like a sentient machine AI, and it's just kind of like chilling. I think that the remnants of like Dark Age of technology are pretty much all over the place in the setting, but they just aren't acknowledged, or aren't outright acknowledged by the authors or the people within the setting. I think that everything is just kind of like out there and isn't like ABC spelled out to us. But I do think that there's enough clues and implications that like it's all over the place. We just don't know to identify it. You want to know like an even crazier theory though? So like way back in second edition, there was a Space Wolves Codex which said that Lehman Russ was on a quest to find the Tree of Life, which was supposedly a source of immense power and healing, which could bring the Emperor back. So the Tree of Life, Lehman Russ. Now in this conversation with the AI, the Kotov is like, "Who are you?" or like, "What are you?" And the AI is like, "I have had many names over the I could pull up the actual quote. It doesn't actually lead this way, but The AI just like starts listing off like a gazillion names because it's been alive for like literally thousands of years. Um, and one of its names is called Yggdrasil, which is the tree of life from mythology. So I'm just saying, maybe coincidences exist, but it would be really cool for like this kind of plot thread to be used to bring a man of gold into the setting. It would be very interesting to see like Lehman Russ come back into the setting, but also with a man of iron or a man of gold. Both, really. I'm not picky. But yeah, it would be neat. Um, anyways, it's not in this video. Like this is a tangent, but it's and there's more of like an announcement for the next video. But it's not in this video. In the next one, we're going to talk a lot more about servitors because they could become a lot more relevant in the next one. Um, yeah. Okay, so who's this for? This book is slow in the extreme. Like when I say slow, think like Wheel of Time, where like basically nothing happens until like the last like eight, like six chapters. Like that's what I'm talking about. Like where there's like a gazillion pages of dialogue and then there's like 5 pages of actual wrap up where action happens. That's this book. So basically like the first 7-ish 8 hours or so is setup, exposition, introduction, dialogue. If you like yourself some like fast-paced action full of like quick wit with like cool set pieces and like immediate stakes, then like this book is not for you. Like stay away from this book. I highly recommend if you are one of those, you just look up a story breakdown of what happens instead of actually reading it because it is not worth your time. Like you will hate this book with all of your being. Those who will enjoy this book are like anybody who's a Mechanicus fan. First and foremost, if you're a Mechanicus fan, this is like a must read. Like you need to do this. A tech priest like is on the cover of the book for a reason. Something like Mechanicus, whether it be like an ideology, a concept, a methodology, a social convention, like it's either being actively discussed, experienced, or like challenged at any given moment in this book. So this is like also for those who are into 40K or getting into 40K that want like a more comprehensive understanding of what the Mechanicus is and how they operate. Even a book like Brutal Cunning, which has the Mechanicus for half of that book fighting orcs, it doesn't do like as good of a job, at least in my opinion, at exploring and like depicting the Mechanicus than this book like does. So yeah, that's pretty much who this book is for. I forgot to mention, but for like homework for this book, I mean, if you want to know who Hawk is and have like a little bit more of an idea about him, then read Storm of Iron. But you don't need to read Storm of Iron. If you just read this book, then you'll be fine. Yeah. So, finally, the review. And probably the only reason that people actually read, or like not read, but see these videos. If I look at the analytics, it's pretty much like a plateau all the way to the review like timestamp, and then suddenly I get like a peak. And it's not like a bazillion people like watch these videos. So yeah, the real reason why people watch these videos. So the review, the Forges of Mars series has the most unique setup and story out of any series or trilogy like I have read in 40K before or since. There's a mystery that brings together a fleet of ships, and more importantly, characters who all get a decent amount of time and attention in the story to be memorable and chase their own beliefs and agendas. Like everyone's given time to like breathe inside of this story. It's part of the reason why it's so long. The cast is huge, but like all of them feel like real characters and not just like a faceless kind of like mesh where you're like, I don't know who that was, but they died and I'm supposed to care. Like nobody becomes faceless, which is cool. To be honest, it feels like the pilot of a TV show and its execution. The book knows that it's just the first two, like with an ending that doesn't resolve anything, and it isn't shy about being the first either, spending easily the first third of the book introducing everyone from the Rogue Trader and its crew, like all of its crew, to the different tech priests, the Titan Princeps, all the different Cadian officers, every Black Templar, even Galatea, who is like entered really late in the book, like isn't given like a short brief intro. She doesn't just like or it doesn't just show up and is like, I'm Galatea, and then they just like move on. They spent a long time like introducing it to like the reader, basically. They find it on a station after fighting a bunch of like orcs turned into servitors, and they bring it back onto the Speranza. The interrogation between like Galatea, Kotov, and the Secutor is long, but it's like full of details to the story. It's a huge accomplishment that none of the book feels padded out either. So like it's got a 12-hour runtime, but it feels consequential the whole time, which is rare in a lot of 40K books. Every scene has a purpose and leads to a payoff later, which is how things are supposed to work in a story. What is also impressive is that the characters, I mean, I've said this before, but the cast of characters is huge, but nothing ever feels faceless. I could tell you like who the Master of Engines is still, like off the top of my head, or the Secutor, or even that the Ogren that Abraham has is called Crusher. Without that connection to the characters, though, I think that this book would have fallen apart really quickly. The mystery is a big driving aspect to the expedition in the book. It is the friction and the interaction between the different crew which drive the narrative. All of it comes together as an exploration to what the Mechanicus is all about. There isn't a topic that isn't touched on. Like within the Mechanicus, there's classism, bodily autonomy, technological reliance, ideology, theology, the price of ambition. There's politics and politicking. Like it's all explored in very like well thought out ways. The weak parts of this book are definitely overshadowed, but they are there. So particularly the Titans. Finally, the Titan. My God. Okay, so they're just so out of place. They're not good. Okay, and I am a Titan. Like, I love Titans. Okay, they are my favorite part of the entire setting, easily. Giant bipedal walking machines that just like have guns that like you wouldn't believe, and like, I mean, even in this book, one shot from the plasma cannon, just like it's accidental, to be clear. The Princeps doesn't do this on purpose, but like he's having a PTSD attack, right? He thinks he's getting attacked by some Tyranids, and then he just like shoots a plasma cannon, and then like the venting process just kills thousands of Cadians. It's so brutal and cool that these machines are just that huge. I mean, I love, and I've mentioned this before in like a couple of other videos, but I love when the Tau first kind of like got told, even by their own scouts. It wasn't like the Imperium, like auxiliary was like, oh yeah, those are Titans. It's like no, their own scouts came back when they first saw Titans and were like telling their commanders about Titans, and their commanders were like, those aren't a thing. You're hallucinating. Like you're just like you're in shock. Walk it off. Buildings don't walk. And then they're like, no, you believe us. They're bipedal like machines. And then the tower just like, no, that's stupid. Who would make a bipedal building? And then the Imperium made a bipedal building. It's so great. They are so. I'm a child when it comes to Titans. They're awesome. I love them. So when I tell you that the Titans are the worst part of this book, it's with a tear in my eye, because they should be cool. They aren't. They're annoying. They're super annoying. All of their parts. I'm like, I don't want to hear about who's better than the other, or like who's more of an alpha than the other one, because they go in that direction, and I'm just so no. I don't want to hear it, because you go from really interesting stuff or just plain good to like Titans talking about how big their biceps are or whatever. I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. But anyway, yeah, they are a weak point of the book. They take you out of the flow, and it just feels very jarring to go from like esoteric mysteries or exploring the foundations of this technological marvel that is the Archmagos to like a Titan Princeps who's like, I'm a better commander of my machine than you are. It's like, I don't. Okay, I guess. Another weak point is like action in general. Just like dialogue is great, and like linking all these scenes together is great. So the flow is good. Execution's great, but the action Anytime anybody like pulls a gun out or like swings a sword, I'm like, man, I don't know if it wasn't like the focus or whether like the action just wasn't the I don't know, but it didn't seem to have like weight or impact. So, and then lastly, the narrator. So I think Joe Jamieson did a great job, to be honest. I like him as a narrator. I like what he did in this book. I wouldn't say he's like the greatest narrator I've ever heard, but like he's good. Like he's solid. His performance is good. I would not give him the absolute like, you know, he committed the sin of not being Toby Longworth is all I'll probably say about it. Because if you read the comment section on this book, basically everyone is like, man, this narrator, rough. I'm like, I don't know, man. He sounds fine. But maybe it's just because like I'm not English. I don't know. He sounds fine. Like I was able to get past this. The reason I'm putting this in this because I know that I am not you, and you are probably gonna read this or listen to this and be like, "Woof, this is not great." So be warned. You should probably read this if you like your narrators like a certain way. Um, to those that say that the Black Templars sound stupid, though, think about the sentence you just said, and then think about the Templars, and then you think about that sentence you just said again. That's all I'll say on that. All in all, this book is like a wholehearted recommend from me. It's an oldie but a goodie, which like won't have you shoved in like the main narrative that will literally never be resolved because then the setting would dissolve. But instead, it's introduces you and kind of like immerses you into an intriguing mystery that will have a resolution because it's only 3 books long, not like 80. So, yeah. Anyway, that's pretty much it for me. Um, it's a new semester and I'm in instrument lab for like my add-on to private pilot certificate. So I don't know how often these videos are going to come out, but I'm going to try and at the very least do one like every 2 to 3 weeks. So, yeah. And the next book I'm doing is Lords of Mars. Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I hope you guys enjoyed. I will see you guys later. See you around.